Hello, friends, and welcome to last night's table. Now, as is sometimes the case, due to scheduling conflicts or, COVID and such in general, we sometimes don't get to actually play a game every week, and that happens to be the case this week. But that's okay because, as is the nature of any kind of role playing game, there's often a huge amount of work that goes into the setting and environment of the game. So today we're having a special Wider Worlds segment on last night's table where I'll be going over the city of Landonport, which is the major setting that we've been using as our sort of base of operations and an adventuring hub in our most recent games. Now, I've been using the setting for probably 5 years now or so, so it's something that I've really had some time to sort of grow into. And Landonport is the city that we tend to keep gravitating towards. Like a lot of time, a lot of sessions and player hours have been spent in the city. So I guess just to start off, a little bit of a history of the town is that Landonport is a port city, which is probably pretty obvious based on the name, Landonport and all. Huh? It's pretty similar to my hometown actually when I kind of think about it. Just because I mean there's a strong boardwalk. That's I guess you could call it commercial and shipping. I guess, but there's also some historical interests as well. So I guess without further ado, I'm just going to go through the map that one of my players has drawn up for it using Wonderdraft, which seems to be like they swear by it. They say it's a really great program. And I'll go through the legend, which appears to be in no particular order here, and talk about some of the landmarks here. So number one on the list, we have Madame Roster's Bakery. So Madame Roster's she's been operating for many years. She's older than dirt. She's an old lady, and everybody remembers that she's got this bakery here. It's located in a pretty rough part of town, but despite that, is actually pretty upscale and trendy. But the prices are really reasonable, so you can get really good quality food there for really low. Like it's accessible to everyone. Is kind of the idea. And the reasoning behind this, and secret squirrel thing, but all my players currently know about this, is that Madame Roster's Bakery is actually a front for the Thieves Guild, which are sort of like I want to say like a Robin Hood sort of organization. They're very, steal from the rich and give to the needy, and they're not like violent gangster thugs like you might see in some other settings. We've been going over all the various factions in town. We've realized that the Thieves Guild are kind of the good guys. Next up, we have the docks, which compose basically the large eastern portion of the map here. So the docks are a big, sprawling boardwalk, essentially. So they cover a good chunk of the coast. There's a lot of trade happening there. People live on boats there, and it's really sort of a bit of a sprawl, honestly. Like they keep building docks on docks on docks. So it's a difficult sort of like maze to navigate there. Adjacent to the docks, we have the fish market. So this is where typically you would see a lot of the lower class trade is going on here. So this is the market of the people, essentially. So within the market, you've got most people can get the groceries and basic sundries, but there's a considerable amount of crime in this area. Next on our list, we have Low Street. So this is basically the main thoroughfare through the town. So it does cut all the way from the docks all the way to the exit of the town. Low Street is basically you could consider it like a main thoroughfare, but it is the bad part of town. So it's a pretty rough place to be. From there we have an abandoned tenement building, right on Low Street. So this was an important landmark historically in Landonport, and what happened was it burnt down burning down is a strong word. So it caught fire. Everybody left, right? Nobody lives there anymore. But about 20 years ago, there was, I guess you could call it a group of cults that had moved in here. So they were responsible for basically opening up a portal to the Hells, tried to launch a demonic invasion, and brought tieflings into the world, actually. So that's a pretty recent happening into the history of Landonport, if you only go back about 20 years. Number 6, we have the Greedy Goblin Pub. So this is like the big tavern in Landonport. It's the place that you kind of want to be. The proprietor is one Tesh One Eye, who is she is a half orc bartender, I guess you would call her. She doesn't take any business from anybody. well, no rough business. I mean, obviously she wants your money, right? Which is kind of regrettable for our current party because they got kicked out in their very first session in town and are banned for life. So that's extremely disappointing for me because I really like this this pub. I spent a lot of time in my previous groups doing things in there, right? Next up on our list, we have our sewer access, and you can see that kind of it's in behind the sprawls behind the Greedy Goblin pub. So the sewers are actually a pretty significant component of Landonport, which doesn't really appear on the map otherwise. So the sewers are you've got there's a whole group of people who live under there who basically they can't hack it in like the normal surface world, so they like to live down there, and I really kind of play them as sort of like I want to say like rednecks, basically, right? They're a whole lot of fun to play, actually. That's a whole part of my heritage, basically. And you got your usual sewer problems there, like giant crocodiles, poisonous, venomous, acidic slimes. Just things that you wouldn't want to see on the street, of course, but are just kind of lurking and just a few feet below you all the time, right? Number 8, still sort of in the Low Street area, is we have Garrick's Eats. So this is a restaurant that so far in all of my years of running the setting, nobody has ever actually explored. So there's a couple of things going on there that I can't talk about because nobody's been there, right? Number 9 is Crafter's Corridor. So this is actually a little bit difficult to show on the map, but basically what's happening here is Crafter's Corridor takes you from the low neighborhood to the high neighborhood by passing through this series of, I guess you could call it somewhere between an alley and a tunnel, because it moves up through the cliff face that separates the highborn area of Landonport from the lowborn area. Crafter's Corridor is also home to most of the I guess you call them expert trades. So you've got your blacksmiths, your jewelers, your tailors, basically anybody who produces anything. A lot of manufacturing happening there. A lot of gnomes and dwarves, and maybe a couple of elves too. But basically, if you are a tradesperson of some kind and you're not involved in like grocery, you probably have a settlement inside of Crafter's Corridor. Number 10, we have the Ruins of the Adventurers Guild. So the Adventurers Guild is historically significant for Landonport because the very first session that we ever did using the setting was all about we wanted to get a group of people who had never met before to join the Adventurers Guild. So they had this whole process where you would go through a certification exam. So they would take you through a trial dungeon, so you become a certified adventurer by clearing it. And the reasoning behind it is that adventurers tend to be problematic. There's so many stories of people be all like, the adventurers are in the tavern, the bartender says, hey, I've actually got this problem with giant rats in my basement. Can you help me out here? And they'd say, sure, no problem. So they go down to the basement, they'd run into their first giant rat. The wizard would throw a fireball, or somebody would throw a lamp or something and burn the whole place down. So I guess you could say that adventurers are kind of like an insurance nightmare. And what the Adventurers Guild was intending to do was sort of like separate the the troublemakers from the actual adventurers. And in kind of a bit of an ironic twist here, somebody got disgruntled after, I assume, failing their exam. We haven't actually had a chance to explore what exactly happened here, but the whole place burned down. And currently there is no Adventurers Guild in the world as a result. Number 11, we have the Free Market. So the name suggests that anybody can just kind of come here and open up a shop in the free market, but that's not actually strictly speaking true. So the name is kind of, I guess you could say, ironic maybe, but it is where the higher born people would do their shopping, for instance. So you've got a lot of finer clothes there. You've got jewelry, mastercraft weapons, exquisite produce and street food and such like that. So it's not really accessible to the lower portion of town. Number 12, we have the Grand Cathedral of Landonport. So I don't know that I really want to get too deep into the pantheon of the world in this episode, but generally speaking, we are a polytheistic group of people, so we have multiple deities that we worship. And the chief deity that we worship inside of Landonport in this cathedral is Lydia, who is kind of like an angelic holy crusader who is constantly battling against Daenax and the forces of evil. However, since we are polytheistic, there is a little bit more going on here, and there's another goddess who's worshipped here called Sophia, who is a sun goddess who opposes her sister, Lunoran, who is the moon goddess. So Sophia is, all that is good and righteous and holy, but Lunaran is basically the creatures of the night, the undead, spooky gothic horrors, essentially. So they're constantly at odds with each other, and both of those are pretty appropriate and compatible with each other. You've basically got the champions of good fighting the forces of evil and undeath. Makes a lot of sense to put them together. Number 13, we have the High Street. So the High Street runs parallel to the Low Street, except its altitude is literally higher, which is where the name comes from, since it's up on these cliffs around town. But interestingly enough, too, the High Street is also where all the fancier shops and such are. It's where a bunch of nicer people live, and like the estates of basically the ruling class of Landonport. So it's it's high for a couple of meanings because wordplay is significant. Number 14, we have the Barrel and Bottle Fine Dining. So this is a really kind of nice restaurant. You can get like your caviar and lox for brunch and such like that. I'm not a really fancy person, so it's hard for me to say exactly what you would see in a fancy restaurant because that is outside of my reach. But sometimes we like to pretend. And this is actually a nice place that we've had a couple of significant outings at. Most recently, this is where the party decided that they were going to go on to a fancy dinner date night, which had some hilarious consequences, but is also where a whole bunch of cultists broke in, tried to kidnap one of our person's dates, and was actually just basically the setup for the previous episode that we had of last night's table. Number 15 is Wally Drizz's Wondrous Items, which has been destroyed, actually. So about 20 years ago back, we had another party of adventurers who were adventuring, for lack of a better word, who during the course of their campaign found out that this Wally Drizz character, this really sort of eccentric shopkeeper who dealt in a variety of wondrous but useless magical items, was actually sort of an alias for a much meaner, nastier person. And basically through a course of various events that happened, the shop was destroyed, and since it has a bit of a rough reputation, basically it's a blight on Landonport, the things that happened here with wizards. Nobody has rebuilt it, so they're basically letting it go fallow here as, I guess you could call it a warning to other wizards not to mess with them. Which is actually kind of interesting because I really like wizards in my setting, so it's a little painful to me that I say, wizards are kind of like, they're not regarded very well because I love them so much, right? They're usually a really kind of goofy, I want to say like a Terry Pratchett kind of approach to wizarding, but that's fine. Number 16, curiously, is not actually marked on my map, whoops, but that's the town barracks, so that's basically where the police force is. So it is located in Low Street, but has actually a very insignificant deterrent for crime because that's where all the crime's happening anyway. The town guard is also known as the Port Authority. They originally started as basically a way for the ruling elite of Landonport to impose like tariffs and inspections on any kind of trade that was coming in, and has since grown into an actual sort of police force as well. So that's kind of significant there. And when we have our regular group of people playing in our Chaos and Fists team, that's where Palisade, our tiefling detective, that's her employer, essentially, is the Port Authority. So that's the geography of Landonport, all kind of summed up there. So that's all the places that we have to kind of play with here. I guess it's also significant to talk about a couple of the factions at play here. So most significantly, you would have, I keep calling them the landed elite, but they're the ruling class of Landonport. They are a group of noble houses and families who form basically an oligarchy. And Landonport is kind of interesting and a little bit unique in that there isn't an official government structure. Like you can't say that it's like a democracy and there's no king or anything like that, right? But it's basically de facto ruled by these four families. They are the Landons, who are actually defunct now. I think they're basically extinct. So that's a power vacuum right there. Who are the original founders of Landonport too, hence the name. You've got the McAllisters, who are sort of a financial powerhouse. They do a lot of accounting. Basically, no money changes hands in this town without the McAllisters knowing about it. There are the Canterburys, who are, I guess you could call them the party or entertainment group. They're always hosting these fancy cabarets and galas and such like that. So they're the people in the know who basically know everybody. And there are the Winthrops, who are a bit of an enigma actually, but they they do have a number of interests throughout town, and that's basically where our current campaign has started. Was in dealing with them and some issues that they had. From the Landed Elite, we have a couple other factions that seem to be cropping up. So most obviously from our last episode, we have the Cult of the Lidded Eye. So these people worship basically a nightmare monster. Their name is Quarrelgoth. It is a sort of an eldritch monster whose dreams spew monsters, and that's just their dreams, right? That's the little bit of attention that they're able to exert on the world. The Cult of the Lidded Eye is doing what they can to wake Quarrelgoth up, which can only spell ruin and disaster for the world. We also have the Bloody Fists. So this is a gang of street toughs who kind of run around town. So they are violent, but not necessarily murderous criminals. So they basically run a whole bunch of protection rackets. You've got protection, basically leaning on people. Not very nice people, essentially. So they'll destroy shops and businesses, they'll break legs and bones, and they'll just start fights for fun and such like that. The Bloody Fists are ruled by one Billy Bowler, who recently the party has discovered has actually purchased the Landon estate. So she's moved in there, which if positions and real estate has any kind of authority, which I mean it kind of does, right? That's her effort to kind of consolidate her power and legitimize it at the same time. Next up, we have the Port Authority. So this is the town guard or police force, essentially. And once again, that is where Palisade works. So the Port Authority, as I mentioned, was basically an arm of the Landed Elite originally. So they were able to basically enforce their interests. But since there isn't like an official codified set of laws handed down by the government, they basically exert as much of their will as they can onto the town. But don't really necessarily get any kind of the like funding or support that they may necessarily need unless they're also supporting the interests of the Landed Elite, which could potentially be problematic. Where the Bloody Fists, the mean street toughs, have moved in up there, so that's potentially a problem that we're definitely going to have to explore. And really, that's about it. Those are the major players in Landonport. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody, and if I am, I mean, I'm sure we'll have an adventure about it. So that's the town that we've been playing in. So I do hope that next week I have like an actual story for you. Last night's table, I should be talking about the game that I played last night. And we are looking to be starting a game next week, which is going to be very exciting for me because as a forever DM, I actually get to play as a player in this one, which is going to be pretty exciting. It's not going to be our usual fare, but I mean, that kind of makes it even more enticing to me. So thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Do all that usual stuff that I should be asking you. And, I really hope to see you in the next one.